Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Salesian Sports Broadcasting Podcast. We're back after having a week off because of parent-teacher meetings here at the school. We're here to recap everything that happened at the Super Bowl, the fact that Colin went and nearly guessed the entire score right, except for 1 point. Imagine if this was the Powerball, folks. I mean, this kid would have been a millionaire. It's kind of crazy. And we got the XFL, which we have some things to discuss. We got the Mookie Betts trade. We got more information regarding the Astros. We got some trades, some retirements. We got the All-Star game coming up for the NBA. Hockey still exists as a sport, and New York teams are actually doing comparable for the most part. And it's actually, the hockey's been really good. It's unfortunate more people outside of Canada don't watch it. And, yeah, we're even going to bring back some football today with a little bit of soccer. It's not how it's pronounced, but, I took Latin in high school. So, Mr. Dwyer here, let's start it up. Let's get this going. Let's get fired up. And we're so grateful for all of you listening in as we start a little bit later than usual, prepping ourselves for this awesome podcast.
All right. Hey, everyone. This is Colin here. And the last time we were on air, we were just leading into the start of Super Bowl 54. Now, as Mr. Dwyer said, I actually came 1 point off of correctly predicting the score of the Super Bowl. On the last podcast, I predicted the final score to be Chiefs 31, 49ers 21. I ended up only coming 1 point short, and the final score ended up being Chiefs 31, 49ers 20. So let me just pat myself on the back real quick, and let me just get into what happened in this game. So to start off, this game was pretty kind of ugly played. You see, Patrick Mahomes, who going into this game I think was the unquestioned best quarterback in this league, didn't really show up that well at the start. He threw 2 bad interceptions, and Jimmy Garoppolo on the other side too had a pretty bad interception look too. But yet still, going into the fourth quarter, the 49ers still led this game 20-10. And actually, what ended up working out a lot for them is their best rusher, which I don't think anyone saw this coming, was Deebo Samuel, their wide receiver. One thing the 49ers did off in this game was they have Deebo Samuel running kind of a shovel pass that Garoppolo would do and Samuel would run. So that was actually working out really well for them. And, just a rushing attack too, Raheem Mostert was putting in pretty good numbers. He had 12 carries for 58 yards. But once you hit that fourth quarter, now, a lot of people were talking about going into this game Kyle Shanahan. Now, Kyle Shanahan, if you do not remember, was on the Atlanta Falcons back when they blew that 28-3 lead, and he was the offensive coordinator. And a lot of people blame Kyle Shanahan for kind of just blowing away that Super Bowl, but now he had a chance here. He was up by 10 in the fourth quarter. And what happened? Well, Patrick Mahomes happened. The Chiefs were on the 3rd and 15 in their own territory, and this is most likely a play which could have changed the whole entire course of the game. They were down. There was only like 8 minutes left, and at this point, the Chiefs really didn't have that much of a chance. I was starting to believe too that the 49ers were going to win this game. I didn't think the Chiefs really had that much of a chance, especially if they didn't convert here. But Patrick Mahomes on this play would throw, I think it was about a 40-yard pass to Tyreek Hill, and this play just really started getting things going for them. They would follow with 2 straight consecutive touchdowns to make it a 24-20 game for the Chiefs. Now, the 49ers have another chance here to, take the lead. But I think they had about 2 or 3 minutes left. But Jimmy Garoppolo had to throw the ball a lot. And this was my big concern going into this game, is that I'm just not really sure how Jimmy Garoppolo is going to handle this. I don't know how Jimmy Garoppolo is going to take it if he has to throw an excess amount of passes. And Garoppolo in this game threw 31 passes, which is something he hasn't really needed to do all season, because often the 49ers are really ahead a lot. So they just rely on their rushing attack to kind of close games out. But this wasn't the case here. Garoppolo had to throw more. And as we see, it didn't end up working out well. And the 49ers failed to convert on the 4th down. So the score was 24-20 Chiefs. And the 49ers are kind of on their last breath here out of nowhere. What the Chiefs normally do here is they would run out the ball. And they did that, giving the ball to Damian Williams. And Damian Williams ended up taking one to the house for a touchdown. And Damian Williams actually had a very big game in the Super Bowl. He actually had the go-ahead touchdown in the 4th quarter on a pass from Patrick Mahomes. Now, a lot of people debated this. I actually do think that should have been called out of bounds, because if you look at the replay, his foot looked like it was on the line. But I mean, hey, there's not that much you can get mad about here. That was an amazing comeback by the Chiefs, and the Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl. And the MVP of the Super Bowl was none other than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, he had 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Now, it's nothing really that looks that great to the eye, but when you see what this guy did in the fourth quarter, it was just special. Personally, though, because I think you have to really account for the whole game, if you have to ask me, I would give my personal vote to Damian Williams, because, I mean, going into this game, not a lot of people thought of the Chiefs' rushing attack, but it really showed out here. Damian Williams had 17 carries for 104 yards, a 6.1 average, and had both a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. And I mean, I think if you ask me, I would have given it to him, but I know it's not really that much popular to give this to someone besides the quarterback. But I don't think you can get really mad about Patrick Mahomes getting it, considering the great game that he did have in the fourth quarter. So there's just a lot to be happy about. The Chiefs, this is their first Super Bowl in 50 years. Andy Reid finally got a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes got his first of probably many to come. And overall, I think that's kind of a good way to end off the NFL season. But now, I'll shift to this. The XFL just started off this weekend, and it was very interesting. Now, a lot of people were tuning in to see how this league can compare to the NFL, and I think it did a pretty good job. There was one thing in particular, though, which I did really like. I liked how they did the kickoffs. Now, if you're not familiar, for the kickoffs in the XFL, what they would do is they would just have the kicker back, and he would kick it. Now, normally in the NFL, they would have the kicking team run over to the team that's receiving the ball, and I think that was kind of a play in the NFL, which really caused a lot of injuries. But in the XFL, what they did here is they already had the players from the kicking team back. So what this would do is it was basically just like blocking. So it was more like kind of a normal NFL play, how they would just block and they would run up. So I think this is very good because it also helps players' safety, and I think it also really helps the XFL to be a safer league than the NFL. But then again, though, they had a lot of big hits. But I mean, I think they're just doing that for entertainment purposes. But I think, honestly, if you ask me, I think the NFL should really adopt this XFL kick and roll because I think it ended up working off really well. And there's only 8 teams now in the XFL. One of them in New York, though, the New York Guardians, ended up winning big against the Tampa Bay Vipers, led by former NFL quarterback Matt McGloin, who, if you're not familiar with, actually was the backup quarterback for the Raiders one year. And I mean, yeah, the New York Guardians had a pretty good fan show, and they play in MetLife Stadium, where obviously the Giants and Jets play. And I mean, I think that this league has a lot of potential. Now, it all depends on, obviously it's the first weekend, so everyone's going to be tuning in, but what really is going to come down for the XFL is if they can still keep those same people from watching it. Because you don't remember the AAF last year, which is another attempt of having another league. They had pretty good ratings starting off, but eventually they dipped off. So for the XFL, just the main question is whether this league can really keep that viewership up. I mean, obviously, as you know, it's owned by WWE legend Vince McMahon, so I think that they have a pretty good chance of staying afloat. I mean, I really want this, though, to work because I really think that the NFL season is really longer than any other sport, so I think that a lot of football fans are kind of looking for more football to see, especially in the offseason. I mean, hey, if the XFL can pull this off, that'd be great. And I'm just really looking forward to see what the XFL can do later on, so we'll see.
Colin, that's a great analysis, and I totally agree. I really, really enjoyed the XFL over the weekend, especially seeing the New York team. They look stellar, especially their thick-legged running back. He was literally piling people down. The defense was so good. The uniforms and the merchandise that they're selling, really stellar. At first, I thought they were a little bit kind of cheesy. They kind of looked like something out of a Madden fantasy draft team that you create. But seeing it in person on screen, man, it really works. And we haven't seen it yet, which is unfortunate. But without the extra point and having to do the 1, 2, and 3 points after a score, we didn't get the opportunity to get that sense of how the end of the game could depend on those points. But we did see some really, really close halves, and they just pulled away at the end. And I think that's just because the teams, aside from the exhibition games that they played against each other before the season started, they were feeling each other out during those games and basically figured out what was working, what wasn't working, and were able to attack fully. There were some really, really nice plays. A couple of the quarterbacks have been really stellar, especially for DC Jones, who was on the Chargers and the Bills, undefeated record at Ohio State. He was throwing some really pretty passes. It seems that most of the quarterbacks in the league are dual threats, that they are able to run as well as throw. I was just so happy about the quality of the game. One of the best things about the XFL is the fact that we get an insight to the review booth, contacting the referees and going over calls. Some of the calls, people on Twitter were going crazy. They said in the NFL, it would have been a fine. They would have threw you out of the league. And through the discussion, you got to hear why the certain hits, certain knockdowns were legitimate plays, and people were just playing hard football. I love the coaches that are running the teams. They really great records, both in the NFL and in college. It's just, this is fun. And there's a small amount of groups. The cities that deserve football teams now have it. I can't wait to just see this thing prosper for 10 more weeks, see how the playoffs turn out, and then we'll see what happens in the future. The thing that's going to be tough is this may turn into a minor league for the NFL. They may take players from here and bring them up into the NFL. What's going to happen is more money has to get developed into the league. Right now they're playing at some places soccer stadiums because they know that they're not going to get as big of a draw out in the beginning. But then you had some places like the Meadowlands and even in Houston, there was a huge turnout. And D.C., excuse me for not mentioning them, big turnouts at those areas. We haven't seen L.A. We haven't seen, I believe, St. Louis yet. So we have to see how big those crowds are. But the more people, the more money gets invested in this. And, you little by little we're starting to see certain players that are gaining a lot of notoriety. It's only one game, but they're gaining attention. The wide receivers for L.A. were insane. They were doing a lot of these cross passes, and even though the quarterback was throwing some really heinous throws, my God, some of those catches were so good. So there's a lot to look forward to. That's just my opinion. Me being a teacher and all, having the opportunity to grade papers and watch a game at the same time. Oh my gosh! Sometimes it's nicer when you watch someone else get hit rather than the kid's paper. Aside from that, there's some other things that involve injury, and that involves the prospect who was being examined in the Mookie Betts David Price trade to the Dodgers. So we got people here who got the down info on how that went down and what this means for the future of the MLB.
Yeah. Hello, this is Chris. And, so that Mookie Betts trade, it's a huge trade in baseball. There's not much going on in baseball. I mean, we have this trade. We also have some rumors with the MLB commissioner, Rob Manfred, wanting to change the postseason bracket, change the way the postseason is. He wants the opponents to choose their teams. I don't understand any of that. I don't think it should happen. I think it's fine the way it is. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But we got to talk about this Mookie Betts trade because this is pretty weird. So last Tuesday, the report came out that Mookie Betts and David Price were going to the Dodgers. It was a rumor for weeks, months, since last year's trade deadline, right? People have been talking about Mookie Betts getting traded, and it always seemed like the Dodgers were the most likely destination for him. People were talking about the Mets possibly getting him, but they're the Mets, so they're not going to do that. They'd rather waste their prospects on relievers and old second basemen instead of good outfielders and pitchers. But it's not about the Mets. It's about the Dodgers. So it seemed like they were getting traded. It came out that Alex Verdugo was going to the Red Sox. It also came out that Kenta Maeda was going to the Twins for Brusdar Graterol. But it turns out Brusdar Graterol, who was the top prospect in Minnesota's organization, relief pitcher, fireballer, something was wrong with his physical, I'm pretty sure it's something that had something to do with Tommy John surgery. I'm not sure if he had Tommy John surgery or something like that. If he needed it, if the Red Sox thought he needed it, I don't know. But they saw something in his physical that showed that he was not completely healthy, and they said, "Look, we'll either take Brusdar Graterol and the Twins have to give us more, or you can not. You can take Brusdar Graterol and you'll give us somebody else back, or the trade's not happening." So a couple of days later, it came out that Graterol was not going to the Red Sox, and that the Twins were kind of not going to be involved in the trade. But then on Sunday, it came out that the trade was happening again, and it was the same exact trade that we had last week, except Jeter Downs, top prospect in the Dodgers organization, was going to the Red Sox along with Connor Wong, who's a catching prospect. And Brusdar Graterol is in fact being traded, but he's going to go to the Dodgers. He's going to stay with the Dodgers, and Kenta Maeda is going to the Twins. I think so. Let's start with the biggest part of the deal, which is Mookie Betts and David Price going to the Dodgers. I like this move for the Dodgers. If you've been listening to these podcasts, you know I talked about it a lot, that the Dodgers, they needed to improve this offseason because they missed out on so many opportunities to do so. They didn't get Cole. They didn't get Rendon. They didn't get Donaldson. They didn't get Hyunjin Ryu. They were getting worse as the offseason went on because they lost Ryu. But now they had David Price. And David Price, let me tell you, nobody's talking about David Price in this deal. Everyone's talking about Mookie Betts, which, I mean, you want to start with Mookie Betts? Fine. Mookie Betts, I mean, what is there to say? He won the MVP in 2018. Last year was considered a bad year for him. Well, not bad, but a not as good year. And he still batted around 270, I think, 280. And he still hit a bunch of home runs. Still was, I think, an MVP caliber player. But we all know Mike Trout won that. And, I mean, he's just a phenomenal ball player. I think he's better at actually playing right field than he is a hitter. And that's saying something because he's a fantastic hitter. Like, this guy is the best defensive right fielder in baseball. And that's saying something because I love Aaron Judge playing right field. I think Aaron Judge is a phenomenal right fielder, and I'm actually going against my favorite right fielder to say that a guy on my least favorite team is the best right fielder in all of baseball. But David Price is a really good pitcher. Helped the Red Sox beat the Dodgers in 2018, that World Series. It's gonna be. I'm kind of gonna miss those those games where David Price would suck at Yankee Stadium and give up like 8 runs over 2 innings. But I'd much rather see Mookie Betts get out of the division than, I'd much rather see that than have to suffer and face Mookie Betts. But we get to face David Price, so whatever. But David Price is still a good pitcher. Besides that, he didn't have a good year this year. Suffered with the injuries. He hasn't really had a good career with Boston, but I mean, he did have that highlight where he helped the Red Sox in 2018. Besides his career with Boston, he's actually been a really good pitcher. He won a Cy Young in 2012, helped the Blue Jays in 2015. So he has the resume. He has the career resume, and the Dodgers are getting rotation help. They also are receiving money. The Red Sox are getting Alex Verdugo and Jeter Downs, 2 top prospects. If you're the Red Sox, you didn't want to make this move, right? You really didn't want to make this move because the Red Sox should be competing next year. They really should. But they spent so much money, and it's not their fault. Well, yeah, it is their fault. It's the Red Sox fault that they had to make this trade because they hired Dave Dombrowski. And Dave Dombrowski, they hired him as the general manager. They knew that the type of general manager he is, which what he does is he's going to spend a lot of money on these talented players to win that upcoming season. He did it with the Tigers, He gave Justin Verlander that big contract, Miguel Cabrera, Jordan Zimmerman, and look what the Tigers are now. They're a bottom feeder, and they're still paying these guys like almost $30 million. It's like, and then they're doing nothing. They don't have any sign of getting better. And the Red Sox, they kind of want to avoid going down the path of the Tigers. That's why they hired Chaim Bloom to work for them, because they believe that if they can get rid of the salary now, their goal was to get rid of salary. How do you do that? Well, the biggest way you can do that is by getting rid of David Price's huge contract. So it's not going to be easy to get rid of David Price's contract, but if you include Mookie Betts, not only is it going to be easier, but you're actually going to get some young talent in return, which will help you for the future. So it's helping out the Red Sox either way, whether you like it or not. Mookie Betts might never wear a Red Sox uniform again. And, I mean, another reason you have to trade him is because you literally gave him the highest offer you could possibly give him, which was like a 10-year extension, and he still rejected it. He clearly wants to test the free agent waters. It doesn't mean he doesn't want to be part of the Red Sox anymore. It just means he wants to see what it's like being a free agent. He wants to do that, and he could come back to. I don't know if he's coming back to the Red Sox actually, because the Red Sox, they're trying to get rid of money, and that's just going to add a huge contract to their money, to their salary cap, which there is no salary cap, but to their payroll. And I think the Twins getting Kenta Maeda for Brusdar Graterol, I mean, I don't really like the move for them, but they get rotation help. Yeah.
That was really good, Chris. And now it's Matthew Ventura on the mic, and I just want to go back on what you said, Chris, about the Dodgers rotation and that signing for David Price. Now, if you look at the Dodgers rotation, that includes Clayton Kershaw, David Price, Stripling, Alex Wood, Buehler, and upcoming star, Dustin May. Now, that's a very scary rotation if you ask anyone in the NL West. The Dodgers rotation has been one of the best in the MLB coming up so far. But to veer the topic off to another team, the Mets rotation can be at a competitor for that crown for the best rotation in the MLB. Now, the Mets have signed Porcello, Wacha, and also have young talent in DeGrom, Syndergaard, and Matz. The problem is, do the Mets make a 6-man rotation or stick with the 5-man rotation? Now, what many people don't understand is that when an MLB team has a 6-man rotation, that really affects a lot of pitchers greatly, because usually when you're a pitcher, and during a 5-day rotation, there's a set day where you will do your throwing, there's a set day where you will do your weightlifting, there's a set day where you will do your running. When you have a 6-day rotation, it just messes a lot of routinely things up for pitchers, and pitchers are a creature of habit. Now, what the Mets are going to do with this rotation, I don't know. Will they put someone in the bullpen? We're not sure. We'll have to see in spring training and whether the season gets closer. But a topic of the Mets bullpen is Edwin Diaz. How will he come back from this atrocious 2019 season? I mean, it was awful. This dude literally cost the Mets his season in a nutshell, single-handedly. How is that possible? The numbers speak for itself. He's blown double-digit saves, and and it's not even save margins by 1-2 runs. He's blown saves by 4 to 5 runs on a consistent basis. He just can't be trusted coming out of the back end of the bullpen. And in my opinion, that is a reason why the Mets have made such a big signing on Betances, and including an offseason and hiring a new pitching coach and having Familia be one of the opportunities to close out a game. But he also recently had an interview, and he accepts what occurred last year. He accepts it. 5.59 ERA compared to when a year prior when he had a 1.96 ERA and saving a league leading 57 games with the Mariners. And that was that catfish that the Mets signed. But of course, with the Mets' luck, just atrocious in 2019. Atrocious. Cost the Mets their season. Complete bust. And all we have to look forward to is how he plans to rebound in the 2020 season with the Mets. Thank you.
Hello, this is Albert, and one thing I want to cover is injuries. So we all know there has been long injuries like Tommy John surgery, or there's injuries like ones that end careers, like what happened with Prince Fielder, and a numerous amount of other players. Then there's the ones that make you want to belly over laughing, of how it was caused. So recently, from the Mariners, the Diamondbacks acquired Mike Leake. Now, Mike Leake, he missed bullpen sessions for spring training because he aggravated a wrist fracture on his non-throwing arm, and he's been apparently fighting for years, that he's been dealing with for years, because he tripped and fell while chasing his dog. I probably spent a good 15 minutes laughing, not at the injury, but how it happened. Like, out of all things you could have done, you trip and re-injure a wrist fracture that you've had for years, and you haven't aggravated it at all. And then that's how you aggravate it. Like, I stood there puzzled and just laughing because I couldn't even hold my phone straight because I just couldn't believe what I was reading. It's like, out of all ways to miss bullpen sessions, that's how you're going to do it? Great. What's next?
All right. So away from topics of just general MLB, there's an article that Bleacher Report recently published. You know, we all know Bleacher Report, the most reputable news source for all sports, except for baseball, because nobody covers baseball. I mean, ESPN covered maybe one baseball story in the past 2 weeks. Probably got it wrong. So, Bleacher Report put out their top 50 MLB players at the start of the 2020 spring training. Now, I haven't even looked at when I first saw the list, I just looked at the honorable mentions, and I'm already saying to myself, okay, this is a joke. Because there's no way that Hyun-Jin Ryu is not a top 50 MLB pitcher. Because this guy was runner-up to Cy Young. But if you look at number 48, Lance Lynn is a top 50 player, but Hyun-Jin Ryu is not. You know, this is what keeps me up at night, because there's no way you can tell me with a straight face that Lance Lynn had a better season than Hyun-Jin Ryu. All right, but that it just gets better from here. One down, Sonny Gray had a better season than Hyun-Jin Ryu. All right, you look at him from last year, complete bum. He's like Edwin Diaz, but he actually starts his games. And you look at him now, he's decent. Like, he's like J.A. Happ, but younger. Probably worse, though.
That's true.
Carlos Correa is 46 on this list. I knew the guy had a down season, but he's still probably a top 30 player. Joey Gallo's on this list at all? I mean, he's an all-star, but he's not a top 50 player. This is not MLB The Show, by the way. And this is what... Oh, I have one more after this. Gleyber Torres is 43. Now, that disgusts me as a man, because there's no way. There's no way that's true.
He should be at least top 10. At least the top 10.
Gleyber Torres, we all know, 22-year-old shortstop. Amazing season last year. He's not number 43 on this list. He's got to be higher than that. The last one, of course, I have to mention another Yankee because my bias. DJ LeMahieu is 32. This guy, he was probably the fourth best in the MLB in the AL for out of hitters. You could have argued him for getting some MVP votes, but this guy turned around the Yankees season. Great second and first base. Playing anywhere. Batted .327. Most homers he had in his career. And I mean, I don't think you can do better than this guy did at the second base part.
And first base. He was one. I had one at first base.
Yeah, that was a great analysis of bad player ratings. But I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to the injury part. You know, yeah, just another example of stupid injuries. I remember Blake Snell, you know, for reigning Cy Young winner in 2018, from 2018. Well, he's not the reigning Cy Young winner anymore. he broke his toe, or he had a toe injury, because he was in the shower and he has this granite statue stand type thing, and he didn't know it was in two parts, so he picked it up and it fell on his toe, and he was out for a lot of the season. You can argue that the Rays could have been a better team if they would have had him. If he didn't get hurt, maybe he would have been better and he could have helped them in their playoff push. But that's just another example of stupid injuries that I thought I would bring up.
This year, the MLB. Woo. Now, yes, Albert.
Speaking of ridiculous injuries, how is Paxton out for 6 months because of a cyst on his back?
I don't know. Injuries are always weird. I mean, Cespedes is a great example of that.
No, he's not injured. He's just lazy.
Albert, I don't think he's lazy. I think he was being chased by his hogs and stepped in a pothole and destroyed his ankle, which was already broken to begin with. He's right now, I think they gave him a Luke Skywalker robot one just so he can not end up being a Bobby Bonilla for the Mets. Yeah, I really hope not. That would be a Kenji Morales move. Sorry, rest in retirement. The MLB is going to be crazy. I think viewership's probably going to go up after the Astro thing because now we got drama. Manfred is literally running this thing as just live television. He's going to Twitter. He's trying to go and do the NBA thing with voting for people for the All-Star game. Listen, kids don't have the attention span they used to, true. But those kids who play the game, they understand the sport. They understand the patience, and they understand the chess match that goes on. There's a reason that these baseball analysts have become so popular on YouTube as of recent, even before the whole Astros incident, where people are analyzing plays and trying to understand why they're making the decisions they're making, why it's good for the game, and why there's so many weird facts in the sport. A lot of these people who are into baseball are often highly intellectual and even comedic. You get tons of comedians who are obsessed with baseball, and it's because of the high-level nature of the game and the fact that you have so many people who have the opportunity to play in it. It's just this season is going to be nuts. I bet you the vision is not going to be as good as 2017, even though it is 2020. Pause for hatred. Good, okay. But it was a bad joke, I'm sorry. Yes, I am very hot in this room here in the fourth floor. That is so hot because of all the drama and topics we're about to bring up regarding the NBA. So, the All-Star game is coming up. Some people did not, they didn't make it. They got snubbed by LeBron, by others who aren't LeBron. Lillard's injured, so at least they opened a spot from him. But it's just things are going on. Things are crazy. Trades are going to be made coming up soon, and we have people ready to talk about that.
Hey everyone, this is Colin here again. I'll get into the All-Star game later, but first I'm going to talk about the NBA trade deadline, which just happened actually a week from today. A week ago from today. But anyway, I'll start off going local. Now, the New York Knicks, they were looking to trade Marcus Morris. He's on an expiring contract, and they ended up trading him to the Los Angeles Clippers. And in return, they ended up getting Mo Harkless and a first-round pick. Now, I know that Marcus Morris is a very good scorer, and he's a very good player for the Knicks, but I think that they had to make this move because, I mean, they're a young team. I don't really think that at this point Marcus Morris long-term really makes that much sense for them. And just the fact that they can get another first-round pick, add another young core piece, and I think that I think that's pretty good for them. But I mean, also the Clippers too. This is also huge for them too because they added a new scoring option to go alongside Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to help them in the Western Conference playoffs, and that's going to hold huge against like teams like the Lakers. Like the Clippers don't necessarily have the bodies to match up with the Lakers, but I think they definitely have the shooting and scoring to maybe push them over the top. And Marcus Morris is only going to really add to that. And for the Knicks, it's also going to be interesting to see like how like what they end up going here in this draft, like what young position, because they're already building on a young core, which they have a lot of now. So I mean, overall, I think this is a pretty good trade for both sides. It was actually a free team trade where Isaiah Thomas also got traded to the Clippers, but the Clippers ended up releasing him sadly, and we'll see what happens with Isaiah Thomas. I like to see him get more chances in the NBA because in Washington he was doing pretty good. So we'll see what happens there. But moving on, I'll start off with the smaller trades and I'll get bigger. Next, I'll move on to the Andre Iguodala trade, which sent Andre Iguodala to the Miami Heat. Now, this is very interesting because Andre Iguodala, up until the point of a couple weeks ago, hadn't played basketball for almost half a year since the NBA Finals, where he played for the Warriors. And so far, it's been pretty good for them. We'll see how Andre Iguodala really does with the Miami Heat, but this is something that I think they've kind of needed, where they have Jimmy Butler, but I think they need kind of more of a lot of a veteran presence because, they have a very young team, guys like Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn. I think Andre Iguodala really helps that team going forward in the playoffs, especially with all the experiences he has going deep in playoffs for Golden State. And for the Grizzlies, they got back some more young pieces. What I remember off the top of my head, they got back Justice Winslow. And he had a lot of promise in Miami, so we'll see what he can do with Memphis alongside John Moran, Jaren Jackson Jr., and those guys. But, I mean, overall, this is actually a trade where, once again, I do think it's been really beneficial for both sides. And we'll see what happens later on in the playoffs, how Iguodala plays that much of a role in the Heat. Now, moving on to another trade. This is another free team trade where Robert Covington got sent to the Houston Rockets, and then the Houston Rockets ended up giving the Atlanta Hawks Clint Capella. Now, I'll talk about this from the Rockets' point of view first. I don't really like this trade. Now, I mean, they already have obviously Russell Westbrook and James Harden, and Clint Capella was kind of their big man. I really don't like the idea of them kind of ditching basically centers entirely. I mean, that means now they're going to have to run PJ Tucker at center, which they actually did. And they actually ended up beating the Lakers, but I don't think that's really going to work later on in the playoffs. Like, if you're going to have to play a 7-game series against LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I really don't think PJ Tucker's going to be able to hold up for 7 straight games. But, I mean, hey, we'll see what happens. But, I mean, Robert Covington obviously is a very great free and D player. He'll add more free-point shooting to the team. And he'll also had that perimeter defense, but I don't think that really matters that much if you really don't have a big man in place. I mean, I looked at the roster with, like, the tallest player I saw, or the only big man they really had, is Isaiah Hartenstein, and he never really played that much, so I don't know what they're necessarily doing there. But the Atlanta Hawks also, like I said, got Clint Capella. Now, the Hawks also vowed to Trae Young they're going to get him more talent around him because Trae Young really has been kind of doing it by himself this whole entire season for the Hawks. And I mean, Clint Capella could help him as kind of his big man of the future. Clint Capella is still relatively young, so that could actually help out really well for him going on in the future. And I'm excited to see what happens with Atlanta because Trae Young showed a lot of promise. I mean, a lot of people compare him to Steph Curry, but he's doing much more at this time than Steph Curry ever did back when he was like 20 years old. I mean, he's already an all-star starter. So we'll see what happens at Atlanta in the future. They're another team that I think is really going to make some noise in a couple of years' time. But now I'm going to get into the trade of the whole entire biggest trade in the trade deadline that I just do not get. The Detroit Pistons sent Andre Drummond to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and then in return, they got John Henson, Brandon Knight, and a second-round pick. Now, I just don't understand this trade at all. Like, I don't get how the Pistons could trade the league leader in rebounds and only get back a second-round pick and 2 bench players. Like, you look at what the New York Knicks do with Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris, much like Andre Drummond, is also on basically an expiring deal. Drummond has a player option, so he can opt in or opt out. But you're telling me you couldn't get anything better than a second-round pick and 2 bench players for Andre Drummond, the league leader in rebounds? I mean, like, the Knicks even got a first-round pick for Marcus Morris, and I think any basketball fan would tell you that Andre Drummond at this point right now is 2 to 4 times better than Marcus Morris, so I really just don't understand it. I mean, the Cavaliers, I'm not entirely sure they're doing. I mean, it's a steal, but for sure they got really great value out of getting Drummond, but I mean, I always kind of thought they were a rebuilding team, but I mean, they also have Kevin Love for some reason, so we'll see what kind of happens there. It's kind of a strange fit, but I mean, I think if you're any team, you would take that for such a low price. I'm kind of mad that my San Antonio Spurs didn't hop on that one, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. But now moving on to probably the biggest trade from this trade deadline, where it was a D'Angelo Russell and Andrew Wiggins swap. Now, D'Angelo Russell is getting sent to play with his buddy Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota. Andrew Wiggins will join the Warriors. Now, I'll start off from the Timberwolves' point of view. The Timberwolves, I think, needed this. They were currently, I think, at the point on a 15-game losing streak. For some reason, it just wasn't working. And I think they saw they needed to make a change. So what they did is they ended up trading Wiggins for D'Angelo Russell. Now, they didn't draft Andrew Wiggins, but he's been on this team the whole entire career because if you remember, that was back when LeBron first came to Cleveland. So what they ended up doing is they ended up trading Kevin Love for Andrew Wiggins back then. And, I mean, he's always been a pretty good scorer. You know, he's kind of a 20-point-per-game guy. But, I mean, he hasn't necessarily done that much for that team in terms of the long run. They made that one playoff series, but a lot of people credit Jimmy Butler for that. So Andrew Wiggins, I think, kind of needs a new, fresh start. But, I mean, adding D'Angelo Russell is huge because I think a lot of people have kind of undervalued D'Angelo Russell. I mean, he's been kind of stuck in a bad situation in Golden State. People are forgetting what this guy did last year for Brooklyn. He was really the only main, even kind of star on that team, and he ended up taking them to the playoffs where they actually even got a game against the 76ers, and the 76ers almost beat the defending champion, almost beat the later assumed-to-be champion Toronto Raptors. So, I mean, D'Angelo Russell, I think, is going to make a big impact on that team in the future. I'm very excited to see what him and Karl-Anthony Towns will do. And now move on to Andrew Wiggins going to Golden State. Now, even the Warriors coach Steve Kerr said that D'Angelo Russell wasn't really the best fit for them. But, I mean, I think that Andrew Wiggins really slots in really well there. Because if you think about the fact that when Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson come back, they can run a starting lineup of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and I think Kevon Looney. And I think that's still a very good team, which maybe can even get to the level where they can compete with the Lakers and Clippers, believe it or not. But I think Wiggins kind of would thrive in that role where he doesn't really have that much pressure put on him. He can just kind of score. Because, I mean, the heart and soul of that team are going to be obviously Steph and Klay. And Andrew Wiggins is just going to be kind of there. So, you know, I think he'll kind of thrive in that role where they're not going to really need a lot out of him a lot of nights. But some nights, if they really need him to, he can make that score an impact. And, I mean, they never really had that. Well, I mean, especially for those years before they obviously got Kevin Durant, they didn't have that really small forward to guard LeBron, to guard those other guys in the Western Conference. And that's going to be big for them. So, basically, what the Warriors did here is they lost Kevin Durant and downgraded to Andrew Wiggins. And, I mean, not the best fan at all, but also not entirely the worst fan. So, looking forward to see how that fares for the Warriors and also the Timberwolves, especially next season, because, I mean, it's really going to be interesting. But now we'll move to this. The NBA All-Star Weekend is this weekend, and a lot of people had kind of a lot of opinions on how the teams were drafted. A lot of people thought that Bradley Beal and Devin Booker should have made the All-Star team. I also feel the same. They also had a great points per game averages, but actually, Damian Lillard last night suffered, or I think it was 2 nights ago, suffered an injury that's going to keep him out for All-Star Weekend. So now that means that Devin Booker actually this happened earlier on today. Devin Booker was named to Team LeBron, and I think he really deserves this. Now, the Phoenix Suns, they're still not really that great, but they got better. I think that Devin Booker's kind of a guy where you have to just acknowledge the talent. I get he's not really contributed to the winning that much, but the guy's just too talented, averaging, I think, 26 or 27 a game to leave him off that team. So I'm happy to see Devin Booker make it. NBA All-Star Game is going to be interesting because they actually changed up the rules a little bit. The fourth quarter is going to have no shot clock, and they're going to have a target score reached to plus 24 in honor of Kobe. And very not the usual from what we see from the All-Star Game. I can't be too critical of it, though, because we just have to see how it works. Also looking forward to seeing the dunk contest, three-point contest, skills challenge. And I think it's going to be a very good weekend, so we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Colin. There's just so much going on in sports, and there's just one section that, you know, doesn't get enough notoriety. You know, they tell everybody while they're driving to watch out for the black ice, but they never tell them that where the action is directly on the ice in the NHL, and that's where they should be watching, because there's been a lot of stuff going on that no one knows about except for the Prime Minister of Canada. Check that. I don't think he knows because he's not even that big of a hockey fan. It's kind of stressful because games have been really close. Defense has been pretty intense. Scoring has been fairly interesting from teams we haven't expected from. And we got, of course, our profound NHL analyst over here to tell us what's going on.
Hi, it's Keith. We're going to talk about the trade deadline today for the NHL. It's going to be coming up Monday the 24th. So, talk about the local teams first, buyers and sellers. The Rangers are going to be the biggest, probably one of the bigger sellers on the market this entire season and over this deadline. They have a couple pieces they're looking to move. First guy they're going to be looking to move for sure is Chris Kreider. He's a guy who he's been very productive this year, pretty much 40 points, 54 games, very productive. The problem is he's due up for a contract. He's going to look for big money, and unfortunately, with that Panarin and Trouba signing, the Rangers just don't have it to go around. I think that the Panarin signing has worked out for them. The Trouba signing hasn't, and that took up a significant majority of their cap, and they don't have the money. That's it. I think that he's going to go to a team, probably the best fit for him, and the team that has the pieces to get it done is the Colorado Avalanche. They were in for the Taylor Hall trade, couldn't get the deal done. He ended up going to Arizona. If they had the pieces for Taylor Hall, they should have the pieces for Chris Kreider. I think that's going to be a big hit for the Rangers, however. Although they're not in a playoff spot or not even really near one, it's a big hit, especially when you lost, a couple players last year, guys like Neil Pionk. They lost Kevin Hayes last year. So losing more players and not really having quality players replace them is not, the best way to rebuild. Now, the second player who is most likely going to get traded over this offseason, or over this trade deadline, however, it's seeming more and more less likely, is Alexander Georgiev, their goalie. Now, Georgiev this year has a 12-11-1 record with a 3.12 goals against and a 9.08 save. The problem with him is, there's really not a problem. His problem is he's due up for a contract, but the Rangers have a really nice young goalie coming up in Igor Shesterkin, and he's just outplayed him. He just has, and he's outplayed him to the point where even Lundqvist is going to start seeing the bench a lot more and not going to get ice time at all. So, this is, and by the way, this is rookie numbers. 7 games played, 6-1, a 218 goals against, and 941 save percentage. Shesterkin has been on fire, and he's under control for next couple seasons as well. Right now, I don't know where Georgiev's going to go. Originally, I thought Toronto, especially with Frederik Andersen going down with an injury. The Kyle Dubas, GM for the Leafs, got a trade done already, so they have a goalie now. I was thinking about San Jose as well. I know they're not a team that's in the playoffs, but Martin Jones has struggled immensely, and I thought maybe it was a change of goalie would help him out. Unfortunately, the reason why I don't think that's going to happen anymore, Tomas Hertl is out for the rest of the season and most likely majority of next season with torn ACL and MCL. So I think that hurt their chances on, kind of wanting to buy a goalie. One team I really think they have the pieces to get it done. I don't think they will, but I would say most likely it's going to be the Vegas Golden Knights. Marc-Andre Fleury's getting older, and I think he's the glue to that team. I think with no Marc-Andre Fleury, you don't have a team that goes to Stanley Cup Finals in their first year, and if they don't choke in Game 7 last year, we really don't know how far in the playoffs they could have went. But I think he's just getting older. His numbers aren't as great this year as they were in previous years, and no fault to him, but Father Time's caught up. And Alexander Georgiev would be a great acquisition for that team. Their backup, Malcolm Subban, I don't think he's quite an NHL starter yet. He spent a lot of time in the AHL over the last couple seasons, and his development has kind of stayed stagnant. So really would like to see Georgiev go to Vegas. That would really improve their team, especially in their hunt for the playoffs. Now, another team that I think is going to buy is the New York Islanders, and they have to buy a defenseman, more specifically a defensive defenseman. Adam Pelech went down with an Achilles tendon injury that's going to keep him out for the entire season. A slight possibility that he comes back in the playoffs if the Islanders do make it, which they should. But as soon as that Pelech injury happened, the Islanders have dropped significantly in the standings, going from about 2nd to 7th. Their defense doesn't look good. Ryan Pulock, and that first pairing with Ryan Pulock and Adam Pelech. Ryan Pulock is an offensive-minded defenseman, and Adam Pelech is a lockdown defensive defenseman, and they work off each other very well. The problem is the Islanders now have a lack of defensive defensemen, except for Mayfield. Mayfield's really not a defensive defenseman, though. He's more of a gritty type guy. He's not going to be able to lock down a first or second line offense, unlike Pelech. And I really think that the Islanders have to go out and they just have to get a defensive defenseman. They don't really come at a premium price, so they're not going to be dealing away any of their top prospects. But unfortunately, Devon Toews, he's more of an offensive-minded defenseman, or a two-way defenseman if you really want to say it. Same thing with Nick Leddy. Same thing with Noah Dobson, and obviously Pulock. Those are just guys that simply care more about offense and defense. And you have to have someone back there. It's showing. I also think now they have to try to go out and try to get another forward as well. This was something I was thinking about them going out and getting a top 6 just to bulk up that depth, but Casey Cizikas got cut the other night by Ivan Provorov skating around the leg area. He's out 3-4 weeks with a leg laceration. Unfortunate news. Now they have to find a replacement for him. Cizikas, I mean, the Islanders have one of the best fourth lines in the NHL, and Cizikas is part of that, and they just got Matt Martin back from injury. And I think Cal Clutterbuck just came back as well. So you really have to take that into consideration. That's what really helped the Islanders out was that fourth line. They can produce not enough, obviously, for wins, but if the first line and second line aren't doing their things, the fourth line is there. And most teams don't have that luxury. So they have to find a replacement for him. Now, the Devils, I would say they're sellers, but unfortunately, they just don't have too many pieces to sell off. They already got rid of Taylor Hall. You're not going to get rid of Mackenzie Blackwood because Louis Domingue has not been a solid goalie at all. And really, who else are you going to give away? You're not going to trade away Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier, obviously. They just have, I think, a lack of no pieces really to trade away or have any trade value at all. And I think the same thing goes for the Buffalo Sabres. You're not going to get rid of Jack Eichel, obviously. Rasmus Ristolainen and Rasmus Dahlin, you're not going to get rid of those guys. You really just don't have the pieces to sell off. That's that. Now, getting out of the local New York area and staying with the West, or staying with the East, I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins for a second because they had some bad news. They lost Jake Getzel 4 to 6 months. Tough news for them. And Jake Getzel, or just the Penguins in general, have been playing very well, especially missing a majority of Sidney Crosby. He's been out for a good chunk of the first half of the season. And they've made it, they've shown that they could play without Crosby, and I actually was very surprised how well they were doing. And they're second in the Metro right now, leading by 2 points over the Islanders. But without Getzel, I think that really hurts them offensively. Their defense has been okay, and their goaltending has been really good. I mean, Christian Jarry has been a huge surprise for them. Matt Murray hasn't been playing well, and Jarry has really took his spot pretty much, and he's been playing, and he's a guy who could probably be a Vezina caliber goalie. But without Jake Getzel, you have to find a way to replace him. Now, they did make a trade for Jason Zucker. This also sent a prospect, a first-round pick, and Alex Galchenyuk over to Minnesota. I don't like the trade for the Penguins. I understand why they did it. Galchenyuk is not a good player, or at least he had high potential in Montreal. He got traded from Montreal to Arizona. He was, then he was traded from Arizona to Pittsburgh in the Phil Kessel trade. He just can't get chemistry with any lines. He's always getting shuffled around the lineup. I think that's been hurting his development, even since he was playing with Montreal. And they traded him for Jason Zucker, who's a good player. He's not a standout guy. He's not a first liner by any means. But I think what was the worst thing is you had to give up that first-round pick to really entice Minnesota to bite on a bad contract like Galchenyuk's. Moving over to the West. Now, the West is a lot tighter of a race, especially for the playoff spots. Really, it's a 4-point race for the wild card, for the first 2 wild card spots. Really, only 4 points separated. The divisions are not held securely by any team. Any team could still catch up, I think. I'm very concerned about the Vegas Golden Knights, though. I know I said that they would go out and get Alexander Gorgiev, but they fired Gerard Gallant, their head coach, a couple months ago, and I'm just concerned. I didn't know if that was kind of a signal that they're looking to blow it up. I don't think they are. I think that they're still in a playoff spot right now, but I'm a little bit worried about them. Now, a team that's kind of surprised me, and I think that they might regret trading away players, is the Minnesota Wild. They're right now in 4th, and they're only 4 points out of a second wild card spot. Right, actually a first. Calgary and Arizona are both tied at 64 points in the 2 wild card spots. But Minnesota is a team that, like I said, just traded Jason Zucker. They were looking to get away of Jonas Brodin and Matt Dumba, 2 of their top defensemen. And so I'm actually kind of surprised they're looking to sell. But that's also a team that they started off the season very poorly. Just they couldn't get their pieces together. they have those 2 albatross contracts in Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. Suter's contract isn't too bad, but Parise's had health issues, which has made his contract worse. And overall, and then signing Matt Zuccarello, who hasn't really performed well at all this year as well, has kind of hurt them. So I'm actually kind of surprised they're looking to sell off, especially where they are in the playoff race. And then finally, I just want to talk about the San Jose Sharks. I mean, they have a couple young pieces, some guys like Timo Meier, who they can really get rid of. Mark-Edward Vlasic is a perfect fit for, I think, the Islanders for that defensive defenseman outlook. I really don't know what they're going to do in the future. Joe Thornton's not going to get any older, and unfortunately, I think that's what they're really relying on at this point.
Oh, what an awesome analysis, Keith, I'm telling you. Thanks, Albert, for the applause. Aside from all the trades going on there is also stuff going across the pond, and that one is not iced over. It is the Atlantic Ocean, and across there we have our famous, well-loved sport across the world, football, which I am pronouncing completely wrong, being as Irish as I am. We don't really do well in the cup. So here we have our individual explaining what's going on within the leagues of the premiers in the world.
All right, so what I want to talk about today with soccer. So last week I talked about the UEFA Champions League, which is a tournament with Europe's best clubs like Barcelona, Liverpool, Juventus, Real Madrid, Manchester City, all the best teams. But there's a tournament coming up this summer, summer 2020, which it's called the UEFA Euro Cup. Now, if you compare the two, they're both made possible by UEFA. UEFA stands for Union of European Football Associations. It's pretty much the association that makes European professional soccer, I guess, possible. I don't know. I know it's the tournaments in Europe, but it might be all the individual leagues in each country. I'm not sure if UEFA runs those, but UEFA sponsors both of these tournaments. But the UEFA Euro Cup involves international national teams, like countries, Italy, England, Spain. It's pretty much the World Cup, but with European teams. Now, Europe has a lot of talent when it comes to soccer. Now, there are other countries in Europe. There are other countries around the world that are not in Europe that have produced some phenomenal soccer players. You know, Brazil is like soccer heaven over there. You know, that's almost, so there's some people that grow up only knowing what soccer, like they play soccer with like they don't even they play soccer all the time. That's the biggest sport, not just in South America, not just in Brazil, but in South America. You know, Neymar's from Brazil, Ronaldinho, Pele, some phenomenal players from Brazil. There's also Argentina, which, you know, Leo Messi's from Argentina. Colombia, some really good teams in South America. There's a lot of really good players that come from the African countries too, and across Asia, and all over the world. You know, even there's some pretty good players from the United States and Mexico. So, soccer is obviously a really diverse sport, but Europe has, I think, most of the world's talent. And if you don't believe me, I just wanted to, just want to show you how dominant European international teams have been over the past decade, or so. Yeah, more than the past decade. The last 4 World Cups have been won by European countries. In 2006, Italy won the World Cup. In 2010, Spain won the World Cup. In 2014, Germany won the World Cup. And this past World Cup, 2018, was won by France. to go even further with that, 3 of the past 4 finals have involved 2 European teams. In 2006, it was Italy versus France, and obviously Italy won that. 2010, it was Spain. It was Spain versus the Netherlands. Spain beat the Netherlands in that World Cup final. 2014, it was Germany versus Argentina. Argentina's from in South America. But then in 2018, it was France versus Croatia. France won the World Cup. To take that to another step, in 2006, Fabio Cannavaro, Italy's legendary center back and one of the best center backs in history, won the Ballon d'Or that year. And in second place was Gianluigi Buffon, Italy's famous goalie. He's 42 right now, and he's still playing soccer. One of the best goalies ever, and he's definitely a legend. He just needs to win that Champions League this year to fully become a legend, I believe. But he's a legend either way, even if he doesn't win this Champions League. In 2010, that Spanish team was outstanding. They were literally perfect. In fact, I think they went undefeated from 2010 to 2012 because they won every single World Cup game because they won that World Cup. They won, I think, most of their qualifiers for the Euro Cup, and they won the Euro Cup in 2012 and won every game in that tournament. They went undefeated from 2010 to 2012, I'm pretty sure. And that team is full of legends like Andres Iniesta, Xavi Alonso, David Villa, Fernando Torres, Iker Casillas, David Silva, Carlos Puyol, Gerard Piqué. Phenomenal team. 2014, Manuel Neuer, German goalie, came in 3rd place in the Ballon d'Or. In 2018, Antoine Griezmann, French striker, came in 3rd place in the Ballon d'Or. And Croatia's center midfielder, Luka Modric, won the Ballon d'Or that year. That was pretty controversial, I think, but I think he's still a great player and definitely deserves a lot more recognition. I think people should be more satisfied with that Ballon d'Or win than mad about it. But I'm getting way off topic here because we got to talk about this tournament. We have most of the groups done. There are a couple of the groups are missing one team because there's still a playoff that needs to be played. But really, the teams that are still trying to qualify, they're not very good. I brought it up last week. Normally, the better teams in soccer are going to win, inevitably. So, I'll bring up some of the playoff winners, but overall, I feel like the teams that are in the tournament already right now are the ones who are going to eventually win it and make a difference. Because the teams that are not in it yet, I don't think they're going to pass the group stage. So let's start with Group A, which is Italy, Turkey, Wales, and Switzerland. Now, at first glance, this looks like an easy win. An easy 3 wins for Italy, right? But the teams that are in this cup, teams that they're facing, they're not bad. Switzerland's not a bad team. They have a pretty good goalkeeper in Roman Bürki. I'm pretty sure he's their goalie. But even if he's not their goalie in this tournament, they still have Jan Sommer, who's a legendary. Well, I don't know if he's legendary, but he's a long-time goalie for Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga. And they have Xherdan Shaqiri, a couple of solid pieces. Switzerland's a pretty good team. Turkey, they're not great, right? But I don't know. I don't think they're gonna come close to winning this group. They might come in last, but I don't know. I just don't think they're as bad as I don't think we should just rule them out as three straight losses. No. Then there's Wales, they have Gareth Bale, who's a world-class player. They also have Aaron Ramsey and Daniel James, who's a young star from Manchester United, future star. But I don't know. They're a good team, Wales, and I think inevitably Italy's got to win this, right? I think inevitably. So I'm gonna say Italy wins the group. I'll say I'll say Switzerland comes in second, Wales third, and then Turkey in fourth. Group B is Denmark, Finland, Belgium, and Russia. This is an automatic win for Belgium. They're fantastic. Starting with the goalie, you have Thibaut Courtois. The defense, Vincent Kompany, Jan Vertonghen. The midfield, Kevin De Bruyne. The attacker, Eden Hazard. Yannick Carrasco is also another midfielder that they have. That team is full of world-class talent. They also have Romelu Lukaku and a lot of other really talented players. Belgium, I think, is going to easily win this group. The real debate I'm going to have here with myself, yeah, I'm going to have a debate with myself. The real debate I'm going to have here is who's going to come in second. I think second place goes to Denmark. Just because the little talented pieces they have, such as Kasper Schmeichel, Christian Eriksen, just to name a few. Russia had a decent run in their 2018 World Cup because it was in Russia. I thought they should have made it further. You can argue. I believe Russia could have possibly made it to the semifinal, maybe even the final. Really, if they lost a penalty shootout to Croatia. Croatia ended up making it to the final. Russia beat Spain in a penalty shootout in the round of 16. They just barely lost to Croatia in a penalty shootout the next round. If they would have beat Croatia, I believe they could have went on to beat England, because England, they're a good team, but they're beatable, right? And I think if Russia could have if Russia was able to beat Croatia and Spain, they could definitely beat England. So I think Russia could have definitely made it to the final, and that would have been really really good for Russia, right, to make it to the final on their home ground. But I think France was going to win that either way. But Russia, I think Denmark's better than Russia. And Finland's coming in last place in this group. Group C, the Netherlands, Ukraine, Austria. And we also have playoff winner D. And the teams that are in that playoff are Georgia, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Belarus. This is an automatic win for the Netherlands, pretty much. They're too good. They have a phenomenal defense with Virgil van Dijk and Matthijs de Ligt. They have Stefan de Vrij. They have Frankie de Jong. They have this other young player. I forgot his first name, but I know his last name is Van de Beek. Really good young team they have over there with Holland. They're going to win this group. Playoff winner D's, I don't even know. None of them are going to come close to winning any games. I'm going to say Austria comes in second. Yeah, there's not much to say about that group because none of those teams are doing anything. None of those teams are going to make any impact except for the Netherlands. Group D is England, Croatia, playoff winner C, and the Czech Republic. So playoff winner C is either Scotland, Norway, Serbia, or Israel. Again, I don't think any of those teams are going to come close. I think pretty much the way it's listed right here, it has England on top, Croatia in second, the playoff winner C in third, and Czech Republic in fourth. I think that's exactly how it's going to go. Except, but, you can argue Croatia could actually be better than England. It's going to really come down to who beats... It's really gonna come down to that game, England versus Croatia, who wins that game, because I think England and Croatia could both beat the Czech Republic and the playoff winner. Group E is Spain versus Sweden. It's Spain, Sweden, Poland, and playoff winner B. I'm gonna say Spain wins this group. Poland comes in second. Sweden comes in third, and the playoff winner B comes in fourth. Playoff winner B is either Bosnia and Herzegovina, Slovakia, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. But again, I don't think either of those teams are going to make an impact. I'm going to say Spain comes in first, Poland in second, Sweden third, playoff winner B in fourth. Poland's a really good team. They have Wojciech Szczesny, who has had a bit of a resurgence of a career since joining Juventus after being a long-time goalie for Arsenal. They also have Robert Lewandowski, Arkadiusz Milik, Lukas Piszczek, just to name a couple of these players. Really good team. Sweden had a really good run in the 2018 World Cup. Well, they had a really good run in the group stage, right? They lost one game. They lost to Germany, but they beat Mexico and they beat South Korea. So, but they eventually lost in the quarterfinals. So, but I don't know. I don't think Sweden's better than Poland. I think Poland's gonna beat them. Now we have Group F. This is the one that everyone is anticipating, because I mean, this is crazy. I'm shocked that these three teams got I'm shocked that these teams got chosen to be in the same group as each other. It's like, what are the odds of Germany, France, and Portugal being in the same group? The other team is the playoff winner A, which is either Iceland, Bulgaria, Hungary, or Romania. I think Iceland's going to win that one. So I'm going to say so the Group F is going to be Iceland, Portugal, France, or Germany. This is a tough group because it can go really either way. A lot of people are crossing off Germany. They're saying Germany are not going to win this group, but because in 2018 Germany had a terrible collapse in that World Cup. They lost 2 games. They lost to South Korea. They lost to Mexico. Mexico's a really good team. They play really well together. So it's not really surprising that Mexico beat Germany, but I mean, I don't know how Germany I don't know how Germany lost to South Korea. They just barely beat Sweden. They did not look good in that World Cup. But Germany's a really good team still. They have a lot of young players such as Joshua Kimmich, Timo Werner, Serge Gnabry, Leon Goretzka, Marc-Andre Ter Stegen, just to name a couple. Marc-Andre Ter Stegen, one of the best goalies in the world. So they're still a really good team. That B team, their substitutes are better than the starting players, I believe. So, I mean, I think Germany's still a really good team. France obviously won the World Cup. They're fantastic. They're getting a little older though. Especially with the goalkeeper situation with Hugo Lloris. He's getting older. Still a world-class goalie. I think he's still really good, but he's getting older. I think France should be fine. I think France is going to definitely advance. And Portugal is really good. They're really underrated. Personally, I want to just like I want to compare the United States to Portugal, because I believe the United States could actually become Portugal. Portugal, they have Cristiano Ronaldo up front, world-class striker, one of the best strikers in the world. You can argue he is the best. And then you got all these really young players behind him, like Joao Felix and, a lot of really young, talented players. And I feel like the United States could do something like that. Like Christian Pulisic is looking like he could be a superstar. And maybe they could have a really young row of young, talented players to go behind him. So, I mean, that to go behind him. So, but Portugal, I just think Germany and France are better than Portugal and Iceland. Again, I don't think Iceland's coming near these two. So I'm going to say it's France, Germany, Portugal, and group winner, playoff winner A. And that's all I got. I don't want to go much further with this because we're already running out of time, but those are my predictions for the Euro group stage.
Amazing. I'm surprised that there's certain countries in there that you didn't mention doing better, like Hungary in that Iceland division and Israel. But we'll see. It's a crazy league out there. Speaking of crazy, the media's been crazy in the way they've been talking about sports this week, and briefly we have Noah to discuss that.
All right. ESPN otherwise known as Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, complaining for an hour or so. So obviously, it's a reputable news source. It's great for news about sports. If you want to know about basketball, that's all it is these days. Now, it's just basketball and football. They're so biased in the way they commentate on sports. There's 4 major sports in the United States. They go over 2 of them. I know it's because the demographics on basketball and football are very high, but you still cannot undermine the fans and the people out here that are tuning into baseball every week, that are watching hockey. And I did my own research. I looked on ESPN. I looked at ESPN. So, on their YouTube channel, they posted 67 highlights videos of their recent talks over the past 2 days. And the reports are shocking. So, over 67 videos posted in the past 2 days in total. 52 were about basketball. 11 were about football. 4 were about baseball. And 3 of them were repeats of the same topic. One of them was the big Mookie Betts trade, which they talked about for 4 minutes, and then presumably went back to Stephen A. Smith complaining about the Knicks. Because we know they're a bad team, but this man just needs to tell us his opinion. And obviously, this makes Keith Kelly a very sad boy. Hockey was talked about 0 times. Now, hockey, I know it's not the most popular sport, but still, it's a very interesting sport, very physical, and it's very good to watch. And I think if ESPN would just market this sport more, market this sport in baseball more people will be watching it. Because when you look at it, these are the 4 main sports, and these 2 that they're not talking about, they get the least amount of views, and they could use this boost the most. Because a lot of people watch ESPN, and a lot of people get their sports news from there. And I think it's just a travesty how they just undermine these communities of fans.
Briefly, I just want to add to that, being the elderly man that I am. I remember back in the day, in the Boomer years, when Boomer actually did the announcements, both Boomers for football and baseball miscellaneous. The highlights used to be most of the important parts of the game. Now you have NBA Network, you have NFL Network, you have MLB Network, you have NHL Network, and that's where they expect you to go to. Oh, sorry, not NHL Network. They have that, but they expect you to go to FS1. And they want you to go and get your highlights at these particular types of channels. Wait, FS1? No, that's sometimes. That's more college sports. It's MSNBC. Oh, wait, MSNBC Sports. Whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Hockey does not get the quality amount of attention that it deserves. I'm telling you, even the All-Star break was very bizarre. But, yeah, there used to be highlights that lasted. Now you get, with baseball, 3 pitches and 2 swings, and you're lucky. In basketball, you get all the major dunks and maybe the last 10 seconds of the game. And then football, you get the last throwing touchdown. That's all you get. And maybe some guy cheering on the sidelines and 900 tweets being put out. And then everybody talks about the tweets. ESPN, you're hurting me.
Also, boycott ESPN because they have not renewed Baseball Tonight for another season. So there will be no more daily baseball coverage on ESPN.
Thank you, YouTube, for picking up that contract and for showing games that ESPN is probably not going to show. With that, guys, what a long day. What a long discussion. Well worth it. We basically took 2 weeks' worth and put it into this one podcast, and we went a bit over. But thank you so much for listening. We appreciate all your attendance, all your listening time. And Albert here is literally going to have a mild concussion. So,
I'm having a caffeine crash.
okay, thank you so much. The nurse has left. It is past 1 o'clock. And thank you all again. We will see you next week.